Okay, that caught me totally off
Look at you
guard.
with the unexpected smooth jazz today. Okay.
I did not know that we had new music for the countdown. But you know what? If we are not flexible and adaptable, we are nothing. So, therefore, thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. You never know what you're going to get, right? You never know what
But
you're
we
going to
don't.
get. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here talking all things leadership. And now I'm like all discombobulated because it's like, where I was like, did I do something wrong?
You should have took
Did
credit
I?
for it. I was like, look at her going with the low key banger today.
No. It was actually nice. It was nice, but unexpected. So, oh, we are going to be talking about something that has been sort of um, very pervasive over the course of this last week. So, I believe it was the weekend, this last weekend, right? Some federal employees received an email from the Office of Personnel Management, I believe is the correct place that it officially came from. And by way of the Doge initiative, right? The Department of
Government efficiency.
Governmental Government Efficiency. And that is run or not run, depending on who you listen to, by Elon Musk. You know what I find really interesting, that every time someone says Elon Musk, they have to say the richest man in the world. I don't know what the psychosis is about that, but every time I hear his name, it's like preface with that. Irrelevant for our purposes today, but it's one of those things that I find a little interesting. And so he sends an email. There's this effort afoot through the Doge to reduce the size of government. Now, you know, if you've watched our program at all, we don't spend our time getting into the politics of things, but we do talk about the leadership of things. That's what we're about, the leadership of things. And so we're going to talk about the leadership aspect of this communication and the request for accountability. And when I proposed this topic to Robert, he was like, "So, what's our angle?" And I think we could have gone a bunch of different ways, and maybe before our time is up today, we will go in a bunch of different directions. But my thought was about accountability, and this is the reason that, and the communication of accountability. And here's the reason for that. I have spent the last couple of weeks training new managers. And so a couple of things have come out of that, some of which we're going to talk about over the course of the next couple of episodes. And this concept of accountability and being able to inspire or coerce, in some cases, right, your employees to get the work done. And I was just wondering if this communication inspired people to actually stop and think about what they do, or if there's a thumb up to like sort of to the man, or sort of like, you know what, one, you're not my boss, right? So there are all sorts of sort of, what do you call, issues sort of swirling around what's going on. And for me, the thought that someone, regardless of what their motives were, what the intent was, that someone for whom I do not know and for whom I do not work directly would be the one disseminating this communication, made me stop to think about it. Is there a better way to get to the heart of what it is? I'm going to make an assumption that they're trying to get out. Again, pulling the politics, the political piece out of this, assuming that they're trying to get to a place where we are down to those people, are trying to get to that group of people who are essential for running essential governmental functions, right? I'm just going to take a leap of faith that that is the purpose, notwithstanding all the things that, people are commenting on, et cetera, et cetera. So from a leadership perspective, is this the way to go about getting to that end? And we touched on this a little bit a couple of years ago when the same Elon Musk took over Twitter and did a very similar thing at Twitter, which in the immediacy certainly created some chaos. I'm sure he would say that things are better. I don't touch Twitter. I don't call it by its new name. So I am one of those people for whom that change sort of in the marketplace did not work. And therefore, I'm wondering if, with the mindset, this worked for him. Right? This is my thinking. This worked for Twitter. This can work in this situation, notwithstanding that they're not the same thing. Right? And therefore, I can communicate with this wide group. There are were over 2 million federal employees. And to disseminate a communication in that way, I'm just wondering if the thinking is I can treat this exactly the way I would a private enterprise and should get the same response. So that's sort of the premise that I have approached this with and communicated to you. Interested in your opening thoughts here.
Well, the whole show your work thing is nothing new to me. I had a boss years ago, who I really respected, and still I'm still in contact with this person today. One of the things that she initiated when she took over the department was something called an after action report. It was, okay, you need to list all the things you worked on this week, the time you spent on it, and what the outcome was. And this is something that comes from the military. They have after action reports in the military. When you have a campaign, you do an after action report. That's where this came from. By the way, many things that we talk about in leadership and training actually came from the military to begin with. So that's where that comes from. So that part doesn't bother me. The issue that I have with it is the lines of command. Like you said, who do you report to? This person is an outsider. There's all kinds of political things going on with this, and how the message is given to the people. The message from the fact that it's in the news gives a big clue as to how the message was received. It was received as a gotcha. We're watching you. Big Brother is watching you. You better be able to show your work. But what's missing from that aspect of it is what work is deemed important. Everybody's job, we talk about systems and we talk about networks, and we talk about systems a lot in the show. Every element of the system is important for the overall working of the system, right? So when every element does its job, the end result is greater than the sum of the individual parts. So every job is important. So that's what's missing from this communication is, what jobs are deemed important and who is making that final decision as to, who gets cut. From what I've I've learned about this, and what I've heard, of the 2 million people that got the email, only 1 million has responded. So what does that mean? So are you going to cut 1 million people? Would the government still, or that those agencies still be efficient? It doesn't seem like a lot of thought. And again, this is not political. I'm looking at this from a leadership, systems, and strategy standpoint. It doesn't seem like a lot of thought went into this. It's just like, we need to cut government. Who should we cut, or who don't we like? Let's go ahead and cut those people. And I think that is not very effective. It's not very efficient. And you really need to look at what the end result is going to be. You cannot, and we know this from studying strategy and studying systems for a long time, that when you make a reaction, when you have a reaction to something, you fall prey to a couple of things. You fall prey to a couple of systems archetypes that are very, very common. One is fixes that backfire or fixes that fail. And the other one is shifting burden. When you have a remedy for something, and then you come to rely on that so much that you lose your original skill point or what you're looking at. And so it looks like I'm going to go with, this is going to be fixes that fail for 200, Alex. So this is going to be one of those situations where they're looking at something here and they're not considering the entire system, and it's going to have an unintended consequence that is going to cause a lot of, we're already starting to see it. We're starting to see it in other aspects of how the government is being run. I'm not going to, say names or point to specific things, but we're already seeing that when you change an element in the system, something else gets knocked out of balance, and they're not looking holistically. They're just looking at one specific aspect of it. So those are my opening thoughts. Not so much an issue with the email, the communication itself. The reasoning behind it and how it was communicated are my two big issues. Oh, and the third one is, what impact is it going to have on the system?
I would agree with you overall, right? And something you said is coming out of the military, this thing about the lines of command, right? And assuming 2 million people receive this email, those are people at every level. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, right? Again, these are not all, this is not 2 million frontline people. This is 2 million people at all levels of the organization. And so it is, I respond, or generally you respond to the person that you are directly reporting to, right? Mm-hmm. That person responds to someone. That person responds to someone, right? And so what we have here basically is a communication that's sent out to an entire group of people for whom theoretically anyway, or again, depending on who you listen to, nobody responds to, yet presumably has an immense amount of power. And so whether or not people responded, approximately half didn't respond. Some of them were told by their direct reports or the agencies or departments that they actually work for not to respond. Correct. Others were told, you can respond, it's voluntary, you can respond if you want to, don't include any confidential or sensitive information. But something, aside from sort of the lines of command, which is, I think, creating some of the chaos that seems to be surrounding this. And the reason that we have lines and hierarchies in organizations is so that people know who to listen to, who to respond to, and how it fits into the overall the goal, right? We talk a lot about teams, and if we are looking to make the work that we're doing more efficient, definitely agree. Accountability, the accountability piece is the least interesting piece of all of this, really, right? Because we all should be accountable for the work that we do. And we've talked about that in the context of the return to office mandates, right? That presumably the issues were managers didn't know who was doing work or not. That's not a worker issue. That's a management issue, right? That's a leadership issue. And similarly here. So the way this should be communicated system wise, and I believe more efficiently, would have been more effective, which, by the way, I think is not the point, right? Which is another show, another program.
Right.
But I think chaos is the point here. So that people don't know whether or not they should respond or shouldn't respond, how to respond, etc. It creates this chaos. But asking people to be accountable for what they do is not an issue. The part of the accountability, however, that sort of rubs the wrong way is that every single week, every single day that you are working, what you're working on changes, right? The import of those things to the overall work that you do changes. And so if last week my accomplishments were cleaning out my emails, right? Responding to, 1,000 emails, because that's how I set my week up to get caught up on, or, in quotes, busy work or whatever, things that need to get done that we often put to the side and then have to find some time to come back to get done. What if that was how you spent that particular week? Does that send the message that you're not a hard worker, your work is not important? It's in a vacuum. That, I guess, that's sort of my thing. And without the context of what people do, sending back, and I think I missed this piece in the opening, and you started, is that the email requested 5-ish. It said approximately 5. I don't know what that means. Approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week. So if what I accomplished last week was sort of a down, and I think about the work that I do currently, and I think about the work that I did in my last job, there would be days and weeks where my workload was drastically different than it would be from some other week, right? There would be weeks on end where I was in the Capitol or analyzing bills. And then there's the summer months that we had where the legislature was out on recess. And the work that I was doing was more about relationship building and making sure I stayed connected with colleagues and people in the building. So if I said what I accomplished last week was that I had, lunch with 5 committee staffers or coffee, does that send a message that I'm shirking, that I'm not doing my job? So the accountability isn't the issue. It is, as you said, how the communication was disseminated, and sort of this looking at things in a vacuum rather than having a full picture and scope of what any one person does in their job and how what they did or accomplished last week is in relation to all the things that they do continuously. So theoretically, presumably, if this were to continue over time, right, then you would start to develop a fuller picture of what people are doing. But are you really analyzing 2 million emails times 5 bullets every week for the next to come?
Well, here's the funny thing.
I'm just.
Here's the funny thing, and the ironic thing about it is it's in the name, it's government efficiency, but the way they did this is not very efficient. So
Not at all.
So this is part of the problem. So, but when we really take a look at this is really about power dynamics. You mentioned this, I think, in the last show. You mentioned referent power, and so I'm going to go through the list of the different types of power or influence, if you don't like the word power. And let's play a game, Whitney. I'm going to go through the list of 6 things, and you pick the ones that you think are in play here. Make sense?
Let's do it.
Let's play. So referent power is whether or not someone likes you. So referent power is when you have like a professor at a school, a university, who is widely liked by the students, right? Referent power. People like that person. They think that person's fair. They think that person is engaging to be around. They can get the information across to you in a way that makes sense. Referent power with people like you. That's the first one. The second one is expert power.
So am I responding as you lay them out?
You're gonna wait until
I'm gonna wait till I hear all of them. Okay.
Or you can say, no, it's not that one. When I say, it's up to you.
No, it's not that one.
Okay, it's not referent power. Expert power, that is when you have a skill, you're very highly skilled in something, and people respect you because of that skill. Grandmaster martial artist, for example, someone who has a founder of a company who Bill Gates comes to mind, somebody who knows a lot about the product that they created and put out to market. So expert power, is that person an expert in that particular field?
In this particular thing? And I'm gonna go with no.
Okay, right. Not in that particular
for this particular thing.
Correct.
So for all the Elonites who are like protesting, but he's an expert in this particular thing. Go on.
Legitimate power. This is really about title. This is title. So when you are in the hierarchy, like you mentioned, hierarchy. So there is a chain of command. So you have a frontline worker, front desk worker, and then you have their supervisor, and then you have their manager, and then maybe their director or executive director, and then the C-level staff. So that's what we talk about legitimate power. It's someone's title. So what about that one?
Debatable, but I'm really going to go with no.
Richest man in the world is his title.
That
That's so okay. So no for that.
Then no. Okay. He's not even an employee, right? There are various things. He's not this, he's not that, but at the same time, someone's saying he's in charge of this whole effort. So, but legitimately, no. I'm going to go with no.
So we got 3 no's so far. We have 3 more to go. So we're at 4. Reward power. Now, this is the ability of someone's boss to reward them for a job well done. So it's kind of baked into that explanation, someone's boss to reward them for a job well done. So what do you think?
Oh, no.
Okay. No, it's not reward power. Here's where it gets interesting. Coercive power, related to a leader's ability to punish his or her followers. So coercive power.
So again, debatable, because we don't know what authority this person actually has, but presumably, at least from the email, it would appear that power is present.
Coercive power. So we have a yes. Maybe. Okay, so
yes,
for coercive power,
maybe. Yes.
Okay, and political power. Its influence comes from leveraging those in a certain social circle. So, and it has some transactional aspect to it. If you do something for me, I can do something for you. And so, what do you think?
I think yes. maybe.
Right. So out of the 6 that I mentioned, the 2 that got the more positive responses for you is coercive power and political power. So
Yes.
those are our winners. Those are our winners. So if really, for process of elimination, those are our winners. So
Yes.
so it really is hinting at, well, if you don't do this, or if we don't, or if whoever these people are don't like what they see, and by the way, we, like I mentioned before, we don't know what it is they're going to like. We could guess, but how are you going to know that from, you can't really get somebody's political affiliation from the jobs that they're doing. So
yeah,
so the whole thing there is murky and not a very efficient way to do this. And
I'm definitely on board with you on the irony of the name of the effort and the implementation of the effort.
well, this is but this goes right along with, and look, I don't know a whole lot about Elon Musk, but it goes along with a lot of the startup mentality. You throw a whole bunch of things out there and you see what sticks. That is not always the most effective or efficient way to do things.
Right.
It's certainly a good way to generate a lot of ideas. The efficiency,
possibly.
Well, yeah, it's one,
or certainly in maybe another context, and maybe even in this context, right?
Well,
that you throw some things out there, and if you get feedback and you're willing to take feedback, which I think is another part of this, is the unwillingness to hear any feedback about the approach, not the end game or the end goal of efficiency, or making sure that the government, that only those people who need to be there are there. I don't that we're rooting out waste, that we're rooting out maybe abuse. You and I have talked offline about the whole fraud piece, and again, if you're going to allege fraud, then you need to launch some legal efforts, because that's a legal thing. But that's certainly waste and abuse. And if there are people for whom there are duplicative jobs, or people who are not doing their jobs, that is incumbent upon, again, their managers, right, to figure that out and to offer them up for termination, or if they're going to do a mass reduction in force, right, to have a process where the people who are making decisions, one, we know who those people are who are making decisions, recommendations for, here are people that are in duplicative processes or not performing up to standards, which is the other piece of this for me, is that what are the standards? What are the expectations? What's been communicated to people? Right. And again, this sort of comes from the time that I've spent the last couple of weeks. We talked a lot about the importance of communicating expectations and accountability and follow up, holding people accountable to what they know they are expected to do, what the standards are for them to minimally meet their jobs and to exceed that. Right. And the job of management and leadership to empower, to provide resources, support, etc., for people to do that, and to just come in and say, tell me what you accomplished last week, and if you don't respond, you're fired. Consider it your resignation, self-termination, whatever, right? How that is, I see, antithetical to, as you said, being efficient, right? And particularly when we've had a couple of efforts where they have sent people away and then had to try to bring them back because they don't understand what's going on, what's needed And I get to your point about like throwing a bunch of things out there. Um, I, I can see that sort of, let's try this, let's try that, let's try that. And it is ultimately creating the effect that I think it's intended to create. And efficiency is not really the desired outcome.
Well, the thing is, when you have any of those ideation devices like brainstorming, where you're just throwing things out there, you're doing that you should be doing it in a simulation, right? So you're designing something, you throw it out there, and then you have other activities that take your ideas and you whittle them down to the most likely, most promising candidate of action, what you're going to use. It just seems like they're taking one person's, and I'm going to say that this person is seen as an expert in all things because they have a certain title. And by the way, titles don't make you an expert in anything. Titles are
True.
just, they just don't. Um, so, and they're using that title and they're using this person's aura, you go with that, to go into certain things and to apply their magic to these things and come out with a solution, all in air quotes. And all that stuff doesn't really add up. It doesn't really make sense because it is not efficient. You cannot run the government like you're running a startup. It's not. You have to look at the hierarchy that's in place. And if you're and here's the thing, if you're not an expert or well versed in that, whatever that government agency is doing, the discipline of that, you're not going to know what their key performance indicators are. You're not going to know what is considered a good job. You are going in there blind. And so all you're using is your opinion. And we know from leadership, we know from management that your opinion is not necessarily a fact. And this is an argument that I have with a friend who thinks that opinions are facts. Opinions are distortions. They can be distortions of fact. Opinions are filtered through your mental models, and you come up with what you think is going on. They are not necessarily facts. Well, they're not facts. And so the whole thing is scary. And it all appears to be, and this is, look, I'm not being political, because you can say this about many managers or many people in organizations. It just seems to be a flex of a sort, where there is just using coercive power to show people who's really in charge. That's the one thing. Show people who's really in charge, and then make a decision regardless. I don't know what criteria they're using, and that's another thing. When you communicate, you should have in there basically your criteria for what you're looking for. So I didn't see the email, so I don't speculate to say, but I don't think a criteria was in there. It's kind of like, just show your work,
Right.
And and then there was a comment made by someone that was like, this is a brilliant email. The email is not brilliant. It's just an email saying show your work. It's just the coercive part of it is making people nervous and will make people respond. And let's be truthful about it. Every organization has people. Well, I shouldn't say every organization, because I don't know every organization, but I'm sure there are a lot of organizations that have redundancies. They have people that, because of nepotism, because people's egos, and they bring their friends in. I've worked in plenty of organizations where relatives were working there that really had no skill whatsoever, but their relative that worked in the organization was worried that person wasn't going to be able to find a job and or be homeless. So they pulled some strings and got them a job there, and they really didn't have a very effective job, something that was really impacting the organization, or
Mm-hmm.
they made up a job for them that really didn't, it added no value, had very little value, questionable value, I should say. So we all know that organizations do that. But by and large, it's usually the people at the top of the organization that have the power to do that. So these are the people that are, if we're looking at it that way, those are the people that probably should be the ones that go first, and they usually do not. So I don't understand the whole logic or process behind how people are going to be, how it's going to be decided who's valuable and who isn't to an agency, to a person, and to a group of people that don't know anything about the industry that agency is in. So this is going to be very fascinating to watch. I call these things fascinating when I'm not involved. I call them horrific when I am. So I'm getting off the soapbox now.
A couple of things. I've said I think that the goal is the chaos. So to sort of address the point that you made about the people, if there was a thought that if I choose not to respond, I have self-eliminated, then they have cut the workforce. And maybe there was some calculus. This is not even an assumption, just like ideating here, that those people who are offended by or don't want to work, I don't want to work for an organization that would do this, that those people would just sort of go away. And then whether that's half or, a quarter, a third, whatever it is, there's an automatic reduction that gives us a place to start. So maybe there's a little bit of that in there. But something that you said, there are two things that I want to address, is a process. And normally, an entity, a company, even governmental agencies, right, will hire a consultant who will come and study, right, will look at the hierarchy, will look at and ask questions and dig into what it is this entity does, and what does it actually take to get the work done. And that is not the approach, and that there's this attempt to move more quickly is, I think, it's creating the part of this change management, right? If we want to put that on, this is the change, right? And this process is not being managed the optimal way we would normally, as people in OD would say that you would want to go about doing this, right? And getting some clarity about what is happening, what it is you want to do, right? And then starting to communicate what it is you're trying to do, involving people, the stakeholders in the process. And I think part of it, this is a phrase that I keep hearing. This is political. I'm just going to say the words. The phrase is political. I'm not passing judgment on it. I'm just saying that we were given a mandate to make change, and this is the change. And doing it quickly is part of that. And so if we get it right, we get it wrong, sort of no big deal, right?
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yes.
I get that. And I agree with you, but getting it, there are degrees to right and there are degrees to wrong.
I'm just, judgment. I'm just,
Absolutely. But when you make a proclamation that you found $8 billion of savings, right? And then you have to correct, and it's really 8 million. That's a huge difference. So
Yes.
that's telling me that there is not a whole lot of, like I said, you could do things fast. You and I can do things fast in certain aspects because we have true expert power. And I'm not just saying that about it, because we do. We have certain things that we are experts in: coaching, training, OD. We have a certain type of skill that we could use, right? A certain set of skills, as Liam Neeson said, that we can use. So we can do that quick and dirty because it's something that we know about in an industry that we know about. I would not decide that, or if I were chosen, if someone chose me and said, listen, we want you to be the head of the NFL, I'll say, oh no, I can't do that. Right? Because my skill set won't allow me to go in. I can learn some things about how the organization is run, but I can't say, well, an organization is an organization. Well, there are different things, right? So that's what I have I know that's not what you're saying. That's what somebody else is saying. That's the argument that I have to that. It's like, well, if you get it right, but there are degrees. I mean, you should, if there's a difference being 10 degrees off and 200 degrees off.
And to that point, you can be 1 degree off. At the start, it's not that big a deal. Over time, it becomes a huge deal, right? And so, which goes back to the point of studying, taking the time to educate yourself about what it is the entity you are working with, how it actually functions, right? And then bringing in the people who are experts at things. Not I think if I were giving them the benefit of the doubt, it would be that there are going to be people who are going to want to perpetuate what they're in because it's to their benefit. And I get that. Right. And so in order to do this thing, we just need to shake it. We just need to shake it up and blow it up and sort of start from scratch. And that may work for a private company, but an entity, a governmental entity that provides services for hundreds of millions of people, right? To apply that broad brush to every agency within it that has different functions and missions, to me seems short-sighted and decidedly not efficient. And right, going back to the accountability piece, they need to be held accountable as well, right? So the accountability isn't just for the people that receive the email, but those who are implementing the change, that they need to be held accountable for how they go about doing this. And what message I would want to send as we begin to wrap this up, what message I would want to send, and this is instructive, right? This conversation is meant to be instructive to you as managers. We talked about it this week, not last week, because it hadn't happened when I trained managers last week. But this week we talked about this concept. And again, if there's not a problem with you holding your employees accountable, you should be. That is. It's really sort of the
job.
You should be holding them accountable, but accountable to what? Right? They need to know what that is. You need to communicate clearly what the expectations are. They need to understand what they are expected to do, what the standards are, what the time frame is. And then you need to actually hold them accountable, which becomes a whole different issue that leads to one of the things we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks, right? Is when the organization doesn't support the managers who are trying to hold their people accountable. And but in this instance, right, having some missing pieces in the chain of command, I don't know who I'm responding to. I don't know if I should be responding to this person. I don't know if this person, other than the title, RM I don't know who this person is that I'm responding to, and if I even should. So for me, this is my sort of wrap up here. As a leader in your organization, right? Stop to think about your communications and what you're asking of your people. And more importantly, Robert said this very early on, how you ask for it, right? How you display your power, your influence, how you ask for or demand information, feedback, etc., from your people, and the repercussions, the potential, repercussions or consequences of that, and whether or not you are inspiring them, motivating them, or if you're demotivating them and creating more problems than you're solving by the way you go about communicating what it is you're communicating.
Absolutely. My closing thought is you can't, if you're looking, one of the things that is missing from this whole thing, and I think that should have, or maybe they did, and maybe they just didn't think it was relevant. All of these agencies are networked. There's a system that's in place. And when you make a change to one system, a small change in a system, when we talk about systems thinking, right, a small can have a profound impact somewhere down the line. And I think you said it very best, like 1 degree right now can end up being hundreds of degrees later on if you're not putting in checks and balances and balancing out those things. So I think that what's going to happen is they're going to realize later on, and that's the other thing about systems, that it takes sometimes a long time for you to see the result. And by the time you see it, it is too late to do something about it. When you have things like exponential growth, where, if something, and this is one of those systems riddles we talk about all the time, where something is doubling every day and it's going to cover the entire pond, like lily pads covering the entire pond, in 30 days, when will it be when will it be at the halfway mark? Well, the 29th day, right? So 29th day, you look at it, you see that it's halfway. Okay, I got time. And then the next day, but you come back 2 weeks later and the pond is completely filled because you don't understand exponential growth. And so when you make a change in a system, it sometimes has profound negative consequences. Yeah. And so, just brace yourself. We'll be monitoring this, and we'll probably revisit it. And it could have good consequences. We don't know, right?
It could, right? If the thought is we blow it up, rebuild it, it's more efficient in the end. I accept my tax dollars back. So if that was going to happen, fine. I think
always remember. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just say, I think that, trying to use, what did it say? Use like a bazooka when, a BB gun will do, right? Just think about, it is a function of, you need to be clear about what it is you're trying to do and asking the questions of whether or not the approach that you're about to take is the best way to get to what you want. And if that is, and blowing it up and starting from scratch is the answer, then have at it.
Very good.
All right. Well, with that, we want to thank you for joining us it was a lively debate. It was
very good. Nice debate. We were on the same side.
Well, what do you want? Thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. Robert, if someone wanted to reach out to you and connect with you to discuss working with you, how would they go about doing that?
They can inspire me at roberthilliardcoaching.com, or you can just send me, that's how you can reach me by email, or you can just go to Robert Hilliard Coaching and go to that little communications page there and reach out to me. tell me some of the challenges you're having, tell me some of the goals you have, and we can set up a discovery call and see if we'll be a good match for each other.
Likewise, you can reach out to me at shiftingintooaction.now.site, shiftingintooaction.now.site. And I look forward to hearing from you if there's any way that I can help you, or if you're interested in being on the program or have an idea or a topic that you would like for us to cover. We would love to hear from you. Whether you are watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, live, or in replay, we want to thank you for being a part of our community. And until next time, communicate well. Think about how you do it. Communicate well and take care.
Bye now.